Ladies and gentlemen, mission success, 1,000 downloads before Remembrance Day has been achieved. Thanks goes to every one of you who has liked and subscribed and downloaded the episodes and have shared a favorite with one of your friends. Please keep on doing it. Guys, the way this podcast grows and gets to as many warfighters and sheepdogs is by you sharing with your friends your favorite episodes. So please keep on doing so. Please keep on sending me the awesome comments. And you know what? I'm going to keep on producing really good content for you guys. Really good episodes on the way. So guys, please stay tuned. And thanks again for all the help and support. I think most of you guys know by now that I've written a book called The Nimble Warrior. Want to get this book into as many veterans and warfighters' hands as possible. I want to get guys and gals moving better, reducing pain, and increasing performance. It's as simple as that. If I can change just a few people's lives with a few of the basic exercises that I learned after I got injured, man, I'm finally serving my country again. So guys, please pass it on. thenimblewarriorbook.com/free. Get your hands on a copy, and I'll personally sign it for you and donate $1 to the Wounded Warriors Canada Foundation. Holy moly, we've got a good episode today. We're sitting down with the man, the legend, Kelly Starrett, the Supple Leopard himself, sits down with me, the Nimble Warrior, and chat about mobility. Kelly is my inspiration for writing my book. He's also the dude who, with his wicked YouTube videos, managed to sort out my knee problem and get me moving upstairs and running without pain for free. So he's got some awesome stuff lined up. He's got a brand new training, coaching online package called The Ready State. You guys should check it out. Additionally, Kelly is full of awesome knowledge. And if you don't know who he is, where you been, man? Where have you been? You've been under a rock. But if you haven't heard of him, man, I'm so proud to be able to share his message and hopefully get you guys out of the pain cave and get you moving better again. So without further ado, here's Kelly Starrett.
Welcome to the Hard to Kill podcast, the go-to podcast for military, LEO, and EMS professionals. Sharing ideas and experiences from around the world to make you hard to kill. Here's your host, Dave Morrow.
2, 1. All right, we're live, dude. Kelly, man, thanks so much for being on the podcast. When I started out kind of in this business, it was about a year ago. My background was teaching, and I was a high school science teacher. And like I just mentioned, it was Andy Plimer. So shout out to Andy Plimer with Rugby Coaches Corner. And you were on his podcast, and he was talking to me about podcasts. And I was like, dude, that's like, beat it, nerd. Like, I don't want to hear about your podcasts. Like, I don't know what those are. I'm pretty sure it's just gamers talking about like playing video games. But as it turns out, like, he introduced me to your book. He was a phys ed teacher as well at the school we're working at. And it just opened up a whole new world of things. And I started watching your MWOD videos, which, dude, like, they were freaking incredible. So for like the listeners out there that haven't heard of you, if I'm their first interaction to get you, visible to them, man, I'm so happy to be doing this, man. You've been such an influence on just my progression that it's awesome that you're sitting down here today. So Kelly, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Well, nice to meet you guys. I'm a good dancer. I'm a middle-aged dad. I like to deadlift a little bit. Look, I'm a physio and a coach. If I have any skill set that's worth a crap in the world, it's because I'm obsessed with pattern recognition. It's how I've always tried to understand the world. I had a chance of being a full-time professional athlete, and I was injured as a product of that system. And that really set me on this pathway of trying to interact with how is it and why are we teaching and training in these ways? And then simultaneously, why are we seeing so many common injuries and so much common dysfunction, which is actually just a normal expression of the system? And if that's a normal expression, it's normative in terms of this is how we are. And this, we can almost predict these number of injuries and these types of dysfunctions. Why can't we change the behavior around it? I discovered CrossFit all the way back in 2004 and opened a CrossFit gym in 2005. the 21st CrossFit. And I was a first year PT student in physio. And my world sort of was rocked because I was an product of my training environment, and I thought we were progressive, but it turns out I wasn't skilled or very fit. And you have to go all the way back and realize that, back in 2005, no one was swinging kettlebells. I mean, you couldn't even buy local kettlebells. No one was overhead squatting, really. Maybe if you came out of a track and field tradition. I mean, just deadlifting alone was really strange to be doing. And maybe you did it on the Smith machine, but you were already a weirdo. And so now fast forward a few years, and what we've seen is, hey, people are really pretty comfortable with the tenets of gymnastics. And I mean, you can find gymnastics rings and TRX straps everywhere on the planet. Everyone swings kettlebells. They sell kettlebells at Walmart. And so the world has changed. But back then, I discovered I wasn't very skilled. I thought I was a good coach and a teacher, but I didn't know how to coach Olympic lifting, powerlifting, running, movement. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. And all of a sudden I was in, physio school, learning a diagnostic model for understanding dysfunction. It was really far away from the source. And it turns out that the source is where people are training. That's the place where we can see everything. That's the safe place. We've always said that the gym has got to be the safest environment in which you can find yourself. If you play a contact sport or, you're a war fighter, I mean, good luck being able to control any aspect of your environment, from your sleep to your stress, nutrition, to your food. I mean, you get a flight line meal, or, you're like stuffing Little Debbie snack cakes into your body armor and grabbing a coffee and going again. So, this is the one place where we can actually understand and make sense of how people are moving, what's going on in real time, even the readiness by just their ability to redline or not. And that means that we suddenly have the greatest diagnostic tool on the planet to understand what we're seeing, to understand compensation. And fast forward now where we, have had the pleasure of, we've been teaching a course for 12 years on understanding how your body works. We put tens of thousands of athletes through that course. We work with every branch of the military. We work with crazy departments in the government. Right now I have a few teams. I have the Astros. I get to have the pleasure of working with their staff. The Nationals, I have the pleasure of working with their staff. I have the All Blacks just got knocked out. I got pleasure working with their staff. England Rugby, I have pleasure working with their staff. So what I'm saying is, everyone shows me their dirty laundry. And it turns out we all have dirty laundry because we are human beings living in the context of actual humans. And what we're asking ourselves to do over and over again is to be able to, in a highly reproducible way, put out our best selves. And we will ride that genetic tolerance until it breaks. We will manage those limits until we fall apart or break. And our hypothesis is, hey, I think we can do better. And if we can, have someone in the Marine Corps not retire on full disability, that's a win. And some of these things we can't control. What we should be thinking, especially sometimes our warfighter populations, I'm like, look, if you haven't worn body armor and carried a weapon and, been in a stressful situation, you don't know, you can't be in a great shape. It's impossible. Your tissues are hypohydrated. You're a stress case. You're using Ambien to sleep. You're leaning on caffeine. It's survival. So what we need to say is, well, what are the best practices to limit those impacts so that we can get and be ready to go again and do that longer? Because honestly, one of the things that we're doing right now is a lot of our systems in professional sports and collegiate sports and even the military is all predicated on the fact there's another 18-year-old kid coming through the pipeline. And so we're not really seeing what the development of a soldier, of an athlete, of a human being is from cradle to grave. We get these little snapshots. I ask a lot of coaches I know, I'm like, how many of you someone has actually coached someone for 10 years straight? You've been responsible for their athletic development for 10 years. And not many people can raise their hands, because we get a snapshot 3 or 4 years, and maybe even 2 years, 1 year. And you can't really tell what the inputs and outputs are. And you can't tell if that is actually making an organism who is better at going off in the world and kicking butt. And, the internet has confused us a little bit. Modern strength conditioning is very sexy. But the only goal we all should have is, does this make me better at my job? Yes or no? Does this make me more resilient at my sport? Yes or no? And recursive training, I do pull-ups so I can be better at pull-ups, or I spend 2 hours in the gym so I can do gym culture. That's great. That's as good a reason to be in the gym as any other. Body aesthetics. But for most of us, we are using the gym and we're using training environments to become better at something. That's sport-specific training. And that means, and I don't mean I try to mimic the demands of my sport in the gym. It means all that I'm doing in the gym or in the training environment is to make my person better at their job or at their skill or at their role. And that's the only way I evaluate it. So, if you come out, you're jumping off and you're going through the obstacle course and you're jumping and landing and hurt your knee or ankle. If I couldn't predict that by how you're moving because you don't have full hip flexion or full ankle flexion, you don't know how to jump and land, shame on me. What we've been saying for a long time, as long as you're bigger and fitter and stronger, that's enough. And that got us a long way. But now, because of the internet, because we have a chance of seeing so much data and seeing so many people and working with so many coaches with so many tools, we understand a little bit more.
Yeah, right on, man. Kelly, you touched on a lot of really good stuff there. And, the thing that kind of stands out just at the beginning, you said like you were an elite athlete, man. You were literally training to be, it's a physical therapist, right? And you still had questions, right? You were not like at this apex in like 2005, like I know what's going on, and I know how to fix myself. So, you think back, like I started in the military in 2001. And the amount that we knew was run, push up, maybe do some squats and put heavy shit on your back and go until it hurts. And that's still been the progression up until a few years ago. I was released in like 2016. The whole idea of like training the tactical athlete was very, very kind of nebulous. Like we don't really have anything to follow. And on top of that too, like I deployed to Afghanistan, and the lead up, I was like in my head, I'm like, dude, this is going to be rock star freaking PT. We're going to get after it. I ended up being the guy that was running it because there was nobody really taking the bull by the horns, but not because they didn't want to, it's just nobody really knew how. And I was at that time just really interested in training. I had a science background, but aside from that, like we had the people on base that could help us put the plans together, but ultimately it's still the commander's responsibility. So even at that point, when you're going into the most hot combat environment there is, we're still doing the same things. We're still just going for little runs. We're doing a few weight loaded marches. Tissue, I only started realizing once I started watching your stuff. And because my back's all messed up and my knees all messed up. And once I got like really messed up about 3 years ago, that's where it kind of all clicked. Like, I can't live like this anymore. What have I been doing wrong for so long, thinking that I was fit? So, everything that you're doing has been such a revelation. And that's something that I think, every, not just soldiers, but just every human being on the planet, it's such a powerful message. So, well,
let me jump in because, you've said a couple things that I think that bear sort of ferreting out. The first is, I'm not sure tactical athlete is the right word. Why? Because
I agree.
Because sport is what we call a finite game. It has a clear start, a clear finish. We know what the rules are. We know who's playing, and we all know what the winner is. Like, describe as a war for me, or a combat experience where you know what the rules are, you know what the demands are. You don't. And so that's an infinite game. And the only way to win an infinite game, I'm not trying to make light of war as a game or not, but it's a way of thinking about this. The only way I can possibly win in that situation is to play better and to try to keep my comrades in play and the system in play, right? To support my team. So, I think when we think about athlete, well, I'm like, I can control sleep and I can control nutrition and I can warm up and cool down and I can manage training volumes and training loads and then test myself. That is not the reality. So that's why I think this word warfighter is almost a better word, because, tactician or, fighter, because, what we need to do is say, here is as robust a person as we can create in this moment, and then we're going to minimize the degradation of that person during this combat mission or during this deployment. When they get back, and we're going to rebuild that system to the best of our ability. You also mentioned, that, hey, we used to just ruck and run a little bit and do pull-ups and push-ups. It's because we inherited that system. And, at some point we have to, yes, I need you to be able to run efficiently, but we don't spend a lot of time teaching people to run mechanics. And man, you know what gets you in shape for hiking in the mountains with a pack? Hiking in the mountains with a pack, right? I don't care how fit you are, what your Fran time is, or what your 2K row is, your 5. I need to know how you're going to manage this load, which means I need to expose your tissues to this systematically, but that's not the only thing, right? I need to be able to see a bigger picture. I mean, Maurice de Saxe, who was, Napoleon's marshal, said soldiering is in the legs. And that is 100% truth. I mean, look, I'm not a soldier. I don't pretend to be. I don't know anything about it. But, Sebastian Junger in his book, was talking about the fact that ultimately soldiering is about going to the highest place you can and having a tactical advantage. Like whoever can get up there and shoot downhill, that's the game, right? So really it's about being able to arrive. And imagine you have one MRE a day. That's like 3,000 calories to choke down. And we're talking about the efficiency of the system to arrive on point, to manage hypohydration, the stress, the sleep. So we inherited all this. Now we're starting to say, hey, there are better ways to restore position mechanics, to look at the efficiency of the system and say, hey, if you're hiking up and down over big rocks and stumps carrying a pack, and you don't have full hip flexion or any hip extension, that's going to cost the system in degradation. I mean, and if you're complex enough to go and meet with a tribal elder and negotiate and talk, like you should also, and you can do all the PM on your kit, and do all of this complex nation building, which is what we're asking our soldiers to do, why can't you identify that if you don't have full dorsiflexion or that your calves are stiff? And the last part I think that's really important there is you mentioned that you saw a need and you ended up taking that role on, and that's where we need to understand that there are not enough trainers, there are not enough physical therapists or physicians to possibly meet the needs of our soldiers. So when people are deployed downrange, it's one physical therapist for 5,000 soldiers sometimes. So I'm like, well, how's that going to go? So who's responsible for pain? Who's responsible for this dysfunction? So we have to completely think about who's in charge of this training, and we have to create these smaller networks where people have closer feedback mechanisms. I'm in pain. How do I manage that? Who's training? How do I modulate training? Which means that we have to spend a second being a little bit more sophisticated and putting the responsibility back on the soldier or back on the athlete. You're not just a piece of meat. We're trying to get you to be as responsible as we can. So the idea here is we just need to reconceptualize how the whole thing works. And that we can do because we have thumbs and we're clever. And it's not that complicated. The body is so resilient and so robust. And if we just give it the right input, it will come back every time. Sometimes you're 10 years into thinking a certain way or moving a certain way. It takes a second to back skill out of this, to get your sleep turned back around, to get off the Ambien, right? To get off the balance bars and coffee. That's okay.
The massive amounts of Rippets.
We can do that. And that's because, we're clever, we're smart, we have better information now. And if you look at even how the Air Force is managing, they were seeing that guys they were taking pictures of their food, but now they were realizing the guys weren't actually eating what they weren't getting enough calories. So we're seeing relative energy deficiency syndrome show up during really stressful training environments, right? So we can take what we learn in high performance environments and actually have it matter. And that's the goal. And, who's responsible for pain? You are. And how do I know I'm injured? Because I can no longer do my role on the team. I can no longer do my role on the squad. I can no longer occupy my role in society as a father, or there's a bone sticking out my leg, or I have, rabies of my knee. The rest of it is not injury. If your knee hurts, but you strap on a pack and go, you're not injured. You have pain. Right. And that can progress into injury. Suddenly we're like, I can't deploy. But that is the point where I can be interesting as a human being and be able to say, hey, what are my tools available to me? How do I take a first crack at this? And we have to just reconceptualize how that's going to be managed. Because right now it's ibuprofen, Ambien, Adderall, THC. Like we're just self-medicating, which is the best set of tools that we've given to people to date. Now we can be a little bit more sophisticated. And we are. And people are getting it. Because one of the things that I've found out is that, by the time you're 35, you're really good at your job. the time you're 40, you're even better at your job. But the patina of real injury and real action and real sport kind of starts to catch up with you. So the question I want to ask ourselves is, do I want my most skilled, most experienced people doing the hardest jobs? Yes, I do. Or do I want the greenest, freshest people who haven't broken yet doing the hardest jobs? And that is the heart and sum of what we need to talk about. And,
Precisely.
and you gotta come out unharmed, the best of your ability. If we don't think we can do this, let's just name the devil. If you run in a tier 1 military group, or you're on the front line, there's a 90% chance you're going to retire on full disability. Great. Let's own it, name it, and start to build those processes, because we can't control it. And we might not be able to control all that, but I'll take that 90, 80% Marine Force Recon, School of Infantry. Let's take that back to 50%. Let's take it back to 40%. And then say we were able to control what we could control, and the rest of it's war.
Yeah, right on. So let me ask you this question. Have you implemented or seen a program in any one of the military units that you know of work with that actually puts the onus on the soldier and actually sees the results where they start increasing retention rates?
We're starting to get it better, because, I've sat at enough tables where finally people are like, hey, this is costing us a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's make it about money. That captain, by the time he or she is ready to go, what are they worth to the military? $1.5 million, $1 million?
Easy.
I'm like, so you have $1 million asset, this primary weapon system, right, that is not deployable because, we have a torn Achilles, or so however we come to it is okay, right? If we make it about money, if we make it about disability, if we make it about the VA, we make it about, there are plenty of groups now that don't have a red, green, and amber. They have a go or home, and that's not enough. The War Powers Act damned. Our tier 1 military assets are doing more work and being deployed more often. And that's not enough to have people come home and have a tribe intact, to feel like you can come home and actually rebuild and reset the system. So that's definitely some deficit spending mindset. And those are complicated problems. And it's complicated by the fact that the people that you and I were in high school is not the kids who are in high school now. And it's not the kids in high school's fault. They just don't walk more. They're not exposed to multiple sports. They don't eat as well. They have a different set of demands. And so what we're seeing is underneath all of this is a systematic de-evolution of the human being, where people aren't sleeping because we have Netflix and chill, and we have access to all this crappy calories. We don't know how to cook. We don't do what things that human beings are supposed to do. We don't have a movement practice. I smash myself in the gym and play video games. And if you think I'm making that up, welcome to professional baseball, right? So,
really, yeah.
What I'm saying is we're going to have to reconcile, and that may mean we need to make basic training longer. That may mean that we need to have a training before basic training, the way the Navy SEALs do it, with the Great Lakes. We've got to start to think differently. In America, I want to say that recent, study that came out that just said 80% of us could not even be deployed. We're too fat, too out of shape, too injured. And so, I think we're not the first people to take a crack at this. I mean, John F. Kennedy started the presidential physical fitness test in America because he saw generations of kids who were not prepared to go to war, to combat. And I'm not saying that should be our highest goal, but I'm saying that we do have smart friends working on it. Joe DeCino of the Spartan race and his work. If everyone could do a Spartan sprint, we would be a much better culture.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
We need reasons to bond together. We need to be in tribe. And I don't care if you can deadlift 300 or 400 pounds. What I care is that you can get over a wall, you can go on some monkey bars, you can crawl on the ground, you know how to run a little bit, right? And you know how to do that in a tribe complex. So there's a lot of ways out, but we're going to have to think systematically about where the rubber hits the road. And if we're talking about the military, that's the military. And that starts back in middle school, about getting kids to walk to school and be a little bit more robust. Because it takes decades and decades and decades to prepare a person to be able to handle the things that we're asking our people to be able to handle now. And it's complicated. Guess what? Welcome to the big leagues. It's complicated. And we're not going to get it right. We're going to miss a generation of people, but we can do better, and we will continue to do better.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful message, man. And my previous career was teaching, right? And we're in the high school system, and it was so you wrote Deskbound, and that was huge. And Supple Leopard, obviously. Supple Leopard's like my go-to whenever I have anything wrong with the body, and my clients as well.
Oh, wait till the next edition comes out. It'll blow your mind.
Oh, snap. Okay, cool. So me and, like I mentioned, Andy Plimer, the school is looking to invest in sprucing up the classrooms. So we're like, let's get some standing desks. And you had that initiative to get those standing desks in the class for a lot of the reasons you just mentioned. Like, kids aren't walking to school as much, just the level of activity has gone way down. And we take these like energy nuclear reactors and we stuff them in a seat for like 6-7 hours a day and say, sit down, shut up, learn your math. And
meanwhile, they're growing like weeds.
Oh yeah.
All the furniture's the same height. Like, it makes no sense. Do you say to kids, hey, this is the shoe you're going to wear in middle school? Good luck. I know you're 6 feet tall already, but you're going to wear the same shoe as this second grader. Yeah. That's what we're doing with furniture. It's madness. So when you start to think of it in those terms, you're like, well, I guess we're not clever enough to create better environments for the growing organism. And look, sitting is not a problem. Sitting in wretched shapes while you grow for months and months and months isn't great. And more importantly, it's about, we need at a cellular level this physical input, and that's called mechanotransduction. And if you haven't heard this analogy before, it was first brought to my attention by a woman named Katie Bowman, and I call this phenomenon Bowman's orca. And she noted rightly that orcas, when you put them in captivity, start to see droopy fins, right? Folded fin, flex fin syndrome. And what's happening there is two things. One is that you've changed the environment of the orca. The orca is spending a lot more time at the surface, and so that in captivity, and so that exposes that fin to a larger gravitational moment arm, where the base of the fin has a higher force on it because the orca isn't as underwater and swimming as much as they normally would. Secondarily, because that orca isn't loading the fin, it's not fighting, swimming, hunting, playing, doing orca stuff, the fin becomes weak. And so now you've changed the environment and you have a weak fin and the fin folds over. And that is the analogy for the human being. And what you're seeing is systematically that we have a whole bunch of orcas, savage human beings, who are not in an environment that's conducive to human beings. We don't sleep. We're not eating whole foods. We don't eat collagen. We don't cook our meat on the bone. Right? We're not in a tribe. We don't feel safe. We don't, just check the boxes, and then you're not loading the tissues. And it takes a minute to load the tissues. So why are we seeing so much disc dysfunction in America? Why are there so many back pains and so much low back pain? Because we don't actually load our spines. Like, we don't systematically carry and load and jump and land. And it's all there for us. The Russians have a saying, when you stop jumping, you start dying. Wow. So you know what the cure for that is? A $3 jump rope. You know what I mean? It's like, you've got to be using your body like it's designed to go hard in the paint. And so if we start to think about in those terms, then we can come down, and whatever style or system or tool that really speaks to your community is valid. And that means that we can be completely agnostic about means, but we don't have to be agnostic about outcomes.
Yeah, roger that, man. There's just so much there, man. Like, just putting the body under tension. Like, I used to be a track and field coach, man, and I was a noob. I never did track and field, and I would throw kids like into the gym, and we just go for like a simple round of, let's do 100 meters, easy pace. Kids couldn't run, man. Like, I wish I had filmed it because it was blowing my mind. Right. The lack of coordination.
Yeah, you can show up at any field day at any school and see it, and remember, not their fault. What you're seeing is an expression of the environment. And what I would run field day with my wife, and I'd be like, okay, we're doing sack races. Kids didn't have enough hip flexion to get in the sack for the sack race. And then I'd be like, all right, halfway through, you got to stop and do a somersault. Kids, fifth graders can't perform a forward roll in the grass. And I'm like, wonder how that pee is going. I wonder when this bill is going to come due. And, ultimately we're going to have to think differently about the problem. We're going to have to democratize and decentralize who's in charge of it. We're going to have to think about, well, who is in charge? Well, I think the corporation and business is a big piece of that. I think we're going to have to see that, we're going to have to empower teachers to be a little bit more sophisticated about that. And, ultimately, that's how we're going to have to think differently about the sets of problems. We're going to have to, think about what the environmental load is, from LED lights to inactivity to, whatever it is that it's valuable. Right now, there's a documentary on the internet called Game Changers. It's about all these big, strong athletes going plant-based. And I've had a lot of friends be like, I'm going plant-based. I'm like, great. How many plants do you eat right now? And they're like, I'm like, you don't even know. I'm like, do this for me. Become plant-centric. So don't get rid of your protein yet, but just see if you can eat 800 grams of vegetables and fruits today and do that for a week. And then we'll talk about being plant-centric, because what you're going to end up doing is just drinking plant-based protein shakes and then eating crackers and shit again. Right.
Yep.
And, and the real issue is, we're all looking for the upregulation. Should we be putting, energy into our food quality? Yes. Do we need to be eating tons of bacon? No. Is in and out the healthy solution for the environment and for our ultimate health? No. Does keto work for disease populations? Yes. Why don't we just stop messing around with the edges and let's do the real work. And the real work is, you are not in bed in time. You're not sleeping in a dark place. You don't eat vegetables and fruits. You're not walking. You're not some kind of muscle contraction, practice, whatever that means to you. Kettlebells, deadlift, CrossFit, I don't care, right? And do you feel safe and loved? Do you belong to a group of people? Are you responsible? Are you a citizen? And when we just start to lay that out, then I'm like, dude, you can have all the styles you want, but you got to show me your work. I got to cut you in half. I'm going to count the rings and see your blood panels. And let's remind ourselves that this only works when we can see what the expression of that system is from 0 to 90. Because, as our friend Yuval Harari likes to remind us, we're all going to be 100 years old. All of us, like minimum. That's the new set age, because we can keep you alive. So the difference between 70 and 100, when someone is organized, not inflamed, doing best practices, can get up and down off the ground, looks very different than our modern person who turned 70 and is basically an invalid. So we're going to have to play a much different game. That means that, my kids need to eat food, and they need to be loaded, and they need to sleep, and I need to protect that.
Right on. Who's the individual you just mentioned that we're going to live to 100? I'll put that.
Yuval Harari. He wrote his book Sapiens, which is mandatory reading for everyone.
Oh, yes. Okay. Was he on Joe Rogan? I think he was.
Oh yeah. And Homo Deus. I don't know if he's on Rogan, but he's everywhere. He's the smartest writer of all time.
Roger. Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned just the concept of making sure like all of your big, like we're not playing around the edges anymore. Like that just sounds exactly like Maslow's hierarchy, right? But also like it drills down into like, well, like there's nothing about like eating well, right? But these are the things that there's definitely something that's started. The whole concept of like eating well, sleeping well kind of went dormant for a while, man. And the reason why I say that is that my mother is like case in point. She's 72 years old, hadn't lifted a damn thing in her life, diabetic, freaking, you name it, man. Like things weren't going well. And I laid it out for her, like, hey, like, why don't you come see my trainer? What do you have to lose? And man, she's hex bar deadlifting. She's eating veggies. And guess what? She's not taking metformin anymore, man. Like the idea that, you're too far gone, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, man, that's so out the window, and your body responds like it's this craving for that stimulus.
Yeah. And I think we can be a lot more granular instead of saying eating well. Let's say eat better, sleeping well, sleep better, because there's times when you cannot control that. A newborn baby, let me know how that goes for you. You're doomed. You're not going to sleep for a year, right? You're a stress case.
I'm there, man. I'm there.
Your hair's going to fall out.
I'm there.
So let's go ahead and say, I'm going to control what I can control today, and I'll control what I can control tomorrow. And that's enough. And when I have more agency and better resources, I'll use them. And when I have left, I'll make the best decisions in front of me. And instead of wringing my hands and throw, it's all well and good to be plant-based, but that's a lot of like people dying of their ennui and like, dude, what are we talking about here? Like we have people who are food insecure, who don't exercise, don't move, we're having some esoteric conversation about, how our elite gym practitioners should look better in the gym for body composition, not about performance, not about, first things first is, hey, let's control what we can control today. Did you get any sunlight today? Did you walk around? Do you know who your neighbors are? And, there's a lot of richness in being a human being. My daughter goes to an amazing school here in Northern California in high school. And, she's lucky enough that their lunch, they eat off plates. There's no quick food. It's all made. We know where the farms came from. It's a very Northern California thing. Did you know that all high performance environments, all of the most successful high performance environments I've ever been in, people eat together as often as possible? They sit down and they eat off real plates and they talk to each other, because that's, as it turns out, is the thing about being human. Sharing resources, sharing food, breaking bread. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We know that if families that eat dinner together at night, your kids are less likely to do drugs and get pregnant and drop out of high school. Why? Because they eat dinner with you. So, we can come down and say, let's be as granular as we can about what best practices, but those best practices are really simple. And the reason we need to do it, and this is crucial for people to remember, it's not because you may or may not get injured or may not be diabetic. It's because you're actually not working as hard as you think you can work. Like you can go harder, you can get more work done, you can feel better, you can be more righteous in your application of yourself, and actually have spare energy, spare resources. But that's not how we're selling this thing. We're selling this thing as, don't do this, otherwise you may do this, right? This may happen. You don't eat these cookies, you'll get diabetic in 30 years. I'm like, seriously? That's what I'm worried about, something 30 years from now? No way. But if I say, hey, I eat more vegetables and fruits and I sleep a little bit more, man, guess what happens? I start to feel better. And if I feel better, I can go harder when I train and I can recover better. And I can, show up for my family and not be exhausted, right? Or not have to stress myself out because I exercised. I didn't have to drink a bottle of wine to take the edge off. And these are all real examples. This is not hyperbole. This is me trying to help people untangle the complexity of their lives. And then we're talking about your tissue quality, because at some point I'm like, dude, your ligaments and tendons are inflamed and crappy, and no wonder your knee hurts, So if we're talking about the biopsychosocial model of human beings, let's delve into the bio. And that bio is sleep and stress and tissue health and being able to handle the loads and recover and decongest, all the things that matter. And guess what? We can do it because we're human beings and it's not that complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kelly, this is the point. I'm glad you talked about tissue, because this is the point where I have to give you a huge thank you for your Mobility Wod stuff on YouTube. So if people haven't checked it out, it was 10 years ago you started Mobility Wod, I think.
10 years ago.
Yeah. So I always had freaking knee pain, and I was like, well, it's genetic. My dad has knee pain. My aunt has knee pain.
That makes sense.
It's just a thing. Like this is how I have to live. Until I start.
This is my life now.
This is my life now. I'm 9 years old. I'm just like, my knee sucks. And I watched that one video, just the whole concept of torque, right? And just pushing the legs out, making sure the knees are tracking over the toes. When I went upstairs, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. And at first I had no idea how to do it, right? And then I just practice. And guess what, man? My knee pain, from day to day, I might have, once a week, a little ooh, and that's only because I'm not paying attention. So that is being huge, man.
Well, what it turns out is, people have been really misplaced around, your foot pressure doesn't matter and collapse your arch and wear this orthotic and this, dude, the body tells us about the shapes that transfer to the most energy are the most righteous at generating force. And if you go up the stairs and your knee comes in, your arch collapses, that's like trying to dunk a basketball standing on a springy mattress, right? I need to put that system into a position where it can handle load and return that force. And if that meant being aware of what my foot does when it goes up and down a stair, that's what it meant. What we saw was, a chain reaction. So knee in the right position, makes sense insofar I'm looking at your arch and your ankle. And if your foot is collapsed, that's not a powerful position to transfer and absorb energy or to translate in this lever theory. My knee's not working with your knee. I suddenly have a twist in my knee and then my knee goes up and down. And it takes a lot of steps in that position. So we've always had this theory that when we restore people's function, and restore their position, we restore their normal function. When we improve people's position, we improve their function. So the same conversation about you going up and down the stairs without knee pain is the same conversation I have with Wes Kitts trying to snatch, an American record. They're the same conversations. And, I don't believe in corrective exercise. Why? Because every exercise is a corrective exercise. Every exercise is a skill. So it turns out that, I don't do a lot of monster walks and elbow things. And it's because I have a tool set that looks like every dumbbell variation of pressing, snatching, jerking you possibly think of, rowing, right? I have all of these movements that allow me to reinforce movement as a skill and improve coordination. And when we then practice that enough, I never have to think about my arch is collapsing when I go up and down the stairs. But, if I have a huge combat boot on with an insole, I don't have to think about it, right? Mm-hmm. And there's certainly a time for that. I don't want you to be thinking about your feet when you're trying to, dive for cover or, ascend on on a position. You should not be thinking about that. You should be thinking about, the moment. And that's where we have said, hey, we came out of a system of exercise physiology, which was work harder. And that will take care of all problems. Just get stronger, right? The problem is like strength is never a weakness. I'm like, oh, really? How strong do I need to be? How strong does my child need to be to play soccer? Well, it turns out not that strong, right? Mm-hmm. I see a lot of kindergartners run around. How strong are they? So the real question is, how do I put the skill back into this? How do I define the limits? And what is a good shape? And why aren't I thinking about shape and positions? Because that's the root of the human being. And I have the right to make mistakes and correct them. But if we don't, people are so clever, we'll just solve the problem until we can't. And then we'll be like, I don't know why. I've been heel striking for 20 years and all of a sudden I have these bone spurs and wore out the cartilage in my knee. And I'm like, yeah, because human beings don't heel strike. What are we talking about? Right?
Yeah, there's so many things there. It's funny you mentioned like orthotics, because when I deployed in 2010, like I had these nice monster freaking orthotics. And one of the stresses on my mind was, oh shit, if these get lost, I'm not going to be able to go on patrol anymore. Like it was a genuine concern every day. And then after I came home, I started watching your stuff. I was like, I just threw in the garbage. I was like, man, what do I need?
Wait a minute. Yeah, there's a time. Hey, you're deployed. You're having foot pain. Let's, an arch is like an ace bandage. Like we're going to give you some support. Let these tissues heal. Bad shit happens to people. And an orthotic is the same thing as wearing a back brace. Would you wear a back brace every day for the rest of your life?
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
You might wear a back brace after you've fractured your spine and you need to support it so it can heal. But, we just got to be thinking in those terms. And some of that is, hey, when we're in the gym, we need to be barefoot. We need to make sure your feet are brutally strong. And one of the things that I think has sort of gotten lost in the translation here is the fact that, you don't need to do everything in the gym. The gym is for the basics. Right? You got to touch some positions and shapes. You can play in the gym. The gym is fun. The gym is a place to uncover your weaknesses. Then I need you to go play some Frisbee or actual sports or ride a mountain bike. Don't work on your balance in the gym, right? Warm up, work on a skill, get a little stronger, develop coordination, maybe, hit some conditioning. But then let's get outside of the gym and go be human beings again. Let's go be athletes again. Let's go pick up a new sport and skill. And some of us, we can't. Right? Because we're living in a city and this is the best we can. But the gym is not the place to try to reproduce every single movement a human should do. What we should do is go jump in a pool once a week and go swim. You'll spend plenty of time, doing certain things with your body that you don't need to do flutter kicks in the gym for,
Yeah, right on. Acquiring new athletic skills and doing a new sport, man, I like that. I'm a hobbyist, man. So whenever there's a new thing that pops up, like last year I started playing Gaelic sports. So Irish football and hurling. Holy shit. My brain felt like I had a new brain after learning how to play hurling. Is like, you've got so many different components with, you can carry the slitter in your hand. You can hit it with the stick. So like just that alone put me into a whole new category of like learning something. And it's like going to school again, man. So like with any of my clients, like I love it when they go out and do new shit, just try it. Like it doesn't matter what sport, because it allows you to make those neural connections that end up benefiting you like big time.
Yeah. And, the goal of the gym was to make us better for life. That's why we call it training. Otherwise it's called bodybuilding, what it is. And let's not pretend then that bodybuilding is the outcome that we're after. Let's not say that, bodybuilding look at how big and buff this girl is. she must be a good athlete. Well, I don't know. Until I see her play soccer or see her, play some ultimate frisbee or swim, I'm not going to tell you that your system is working. And it's okay to say, yes, that woman looks amazing, my internet connection is unstable. You there?
Yeah, we're good. Okay. Yeah, we're good.
So one of the things that modern strength and conditioning does is it often makes our best athletes look unathletic because they're not the best squatters in the gym. And that is a good indicator that this is all crap. Because if my best, most powerful athlete on the planet isn't the best athlete in the gym, but is still the best athlete on the field, that's a good indicator that the field is the thing that matters most. And my job in the gym is just to make my athlete better on the field. So I don't care if they can do the most thrusters or most burpees per minute. What I care about is the application of that person. Did they get better at their job? They get better at their sport? They get at their yes or no? That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to touch base, obviously, with your ready state, man. Like we talked about, improving performance and like I did the free trial. Is freaking awesome. I want to know just the progression. Like obviously you did the Mobility Wod for a long time. Now, like seeing that progression and seeing where you've got to, what a freaking program like that would just kind of blew my mind a little bit. So could you give us just an idea of like how that came about and, who is it intended for and how do you get your hands on it?
So, one of the things that we have felt in the last 15 years is, we can't control these variables. So let's get as ready as we can. So ready state is saying, how do I maximize my psychology, my physiology, so that I can control what I can control today? And that's a much better approach than like, we're going to be in some idealized, we're going to checklist and it's all going to be perfect. It's not perfect. So let's control what we can control. And so, I started talking about ready state as a concept, in the first set of notes I did back in 2008, just saying, hey, let's get as much range of motion, the healthiest tissues, the best physiology, the best psychology available to us in this moment, and that's going to be enough, right? So we'll improve the ball when we can. So when we started Mobility Wod, we were the first blank WOD anything. There was no Go WOD, there was no ROM WOD, there was no sobriety WOD, there was no capacity WOD, gymnastics WOD, power WOD, none of that. And I thought I was so clever. And then, it got a little confusing. And then also no one used the word mobility ever. That was the word that we popularized. It just did not exist anywhere ever. Because I'm a physical therapist, we would mobilize tissues. And range of motion did not say anything about your skill to move as a human being. And that's why we used the word mobility. So fast forward 10 years and I was like, we're cutting a lot of people out of this conversation because they're like, I don't know what a WOD is. I don't even know what mobility is. It doesn't. So we also had the advantage of when we rebranded to reconceptualize how people were going to use our information because we had 10 years of experience and data. Mm-hmm. So what we realized is that sometimes something hurts and you need to be able to come in and work on that. Sometimes you just need to unplug and do some daily maintenance. Hey, I'm just going to roll around. I got a ball. I'm rolling to go to bed. Or, hey, I need to be able to have some movements that helps me to get into a better shape when I jerk today or bench today or squat today. And what should I do afterwards? And so we have pre and post for movements in sports. We have daily maintenance. We have pain sections. And you can come in and just even search the archives. And ultimately, though, as you saw through our trial phase, we force everyone to go through our trial phase because we teach you how to mobilize for 2 weeks. It's an on-ramp program to begin how to take care of yourself. You don't have any equipment. Here's how we're going to work on breathing and isometrics, right? Perfect. Now we can go to phase 2. Now we can go to phase 3. And I think what's really nice is that gives us a chance to slowly do some micro-learning. And then by the time you hit the ground running, it makes a little more sense. Because it used to be, like if you were a user, you were like, this is my place. But then the new people would come in and it was the Library of Alexandria. You walked in, you were like, holy crap. Where's the card catalog? What's the Dewey Decimal System? I don't even speak. So, we believe that we'll never have it dialed. We'll just get better and keep being better and more iterative because as the world has changed. When I started teaching over a decade ago, I was like, hey, this is your hip. And your hip isn't working well. Let's give you some more range of motion to your hip. And people would email me like, I PR'd on my deadlift 100 pounds. I'd be like, dude, that's crazy, right? Because your hip was stiff. And you don't even know why. But I was like, this is your leg, And now the world has changed, Amazon has a basics roller that they sell on Amazon. So if that's the case, that this thing is out of the bag, then we get to have the next level of sophisticated conversation. And the site is, secretly, the site is for coaches to be able to be like, hey, I need you to be able to do this because I'm an expert in movement and mechanics and I speak this language, but I don't have time to work on this also. Yeah. And so I need you to go home and be able to follow this video, or I'm going to refer something to you. And then also we got to capture that. Look, we've always believed that one of the reasons that we care about high performance environments is that it allows us to stress test our ideas. Here's the best concepts of eating and adaptation and sleep. Why do we know? Because our athletes can't perform. So we can take those concepts and apply them to our general population, moms and dads like me. So I can understand what best practice is, right? I don't have to, I can benefit from the fact that I have Ferrari Formula One concepts in my Ford F-150, right? And my Ford F-150 will go 100 miles an hour and bump down the roads, but it's still a Ford F-150. I'm never going to be a Ferrari, nor do I need to be. But all of that technology, all of those concepts work their way backwards. So we're really trying to reach out to people and say, hey, we have a first step solution for you to make yourself feel better, to take control of your tissue health. Let's start there. And that's really the heart and soul of the Ready State. So come on in. We have 2 weeks to onboard you, and it's all free. And if you punch out after 2 weeks, I guarantee you'll be a better person.
Yeah. As far as I know, you're the only one that's in that space right now with what you have. And, as a coach, I've extensively used your YouTube content. Now that this is a tool that's out there, and the fact that you mentioned, it's the secret tool for coaches, hands down, man. Like when you're able to go through just the different body parts, and I suggest anybody that gets onto the free trial, man, it is a very cool, easy to use system. Like if your calves are tight or, you're experiencing knee pain, you just zero in on it. So like, awesome job on that whole interface because it was so easy to use. And then
it's easier to use. And I'll give a shout out to my wife, who is my CEO, who is, it almost broke us this year to do that. And frankly, it's a 2-year project to try to get it better and to integrate everything. And, we'll get better. We're getting better feedback. And the other thing that I love about this is on our Instagram, on our YouTube, I get back to coaching, which is people have forgotten that the thing that I am, the thing I care about most is coach. I'm a coach. That's what I do. And all of these mobilizations are what we call position transfer exercises that allow us to achieve the shape so that we can train. So mobilizing, it's great that you got out of knee pain, but that's not the goal. The resting state of the human being is pain-free. So it's nice that I have a tool that restores my positions, that restores my output and can take away my pain, but ultimately it's so that I can put my arms over my head, and then we can have the next conversation. But if you can't put your arms over your head, I'm like, what are we talking about? You're trying to swim. You can't put your arms over your head. This is dumb. More wishful thinking about arms over head drills is never going to restore that position. So we mobilize and then we move. And that's why, this thing works, because that's how the human being works.
Yeah, right on. I want to bring up the great debate between stretching and mobilization. Could you, for some people that have no idea, that's what I grew up with in the military, right? You touch your toes, you put your arms over your head, you pull on the triceps a little bit, push down on the elbows. Okay, you're good to go. Let's go for a run. So for somebody that's never had any experience with quote unquote mobility work, what's your view, between stretching and mobility, and which one should you be focusing more on?
Well, let me ask you, did you like stretching? Did it work for you? Did it stop your pain?
No, okay. It's freaking awful. Fuck all. Didn't do anything for me.
We say this, that, we appreciate that people are smart and they do what works and they stop doing what doesn't work. So the problem is putting a stretch in your tissue. I can do that passively. I can just have you pick up 500 pounds off the ground. You can feel big tension in your hamstrings, right? Is that stretching you? Did that change your range of motion? Human beings are stretchy by design. Your Achilles will store 80% of the energy it returns and return that into a springiness. That's why we jump rope like it's our jobs. That's why jumping is so important, and running correctly is amazing. Do I want to stretch you out? Is that something I want to go away? Do I want to stretch the man? So what part of your body is stretching? So that's a missed term, right? So the other thing is it account for all your tissues? Am I trying to reset your resting length tension relationship of your musculature? Am I trying to normalize how your tissues slide over one another? Am I trying to change how your joint capsule is working? And then do you have skill to support that? Do you have the environment to support that skill and that tissue health? So, what we've said with mobility is ultimately it's about the expression of position. Do I have the raw range of motion to be able to get there? And do I have the technique to be able to express that movement right through that range of motion? And mobilizing is a set of tools that takes a system approach that restores whatever needs to be restored. And it may be working on multiple systems at the same time to do what? To have a clear end goal, which is what is normative physiology. How much should your ankle be able to flex? Well, we tell you this is your end goal. And if you can't get that, you probably should be working on restoring and improving that position. But just stretching your calves willy-nilly to no end goal, that doesn't make sense, right? What you're doing is just end range isometrics for a second. That's valuable, but it obviously doesn't cure elbow, disease, right? Because just pulling on something for a second doesn't change anything for a second. So, what we saw was that we had a real opportunity to raise the bar on how people took care of themselves, address their soft tissue dysfunctions, and improve their position. But if you don't know what your end range position is, you're just going to keep stretching until what? You do the splits or until your leg rips off, or like when's enough, right?
Exactly.
And more importantly, did that allow you to generate more force? Yes or no? And the chances are, no, it didn't.
Yeah, right on. I mean, for me, it was finally getting into the gym. And you mentioned it right at the start, like deadlifting and just Olympic lifting, just in general, like our weight room in high school was locked because they didn't want people hurting themselves. I'm like, well, why do we have it? They're like, well, it's for the varsity quote unquote athletes, but we didn't really have it. I was like, okay, so we just have all this weight up there doing nothing. And people are scared that we're going to injure ourselves. Check. So never picked up a barbell until like 2008.
We didn't know. And it's okay to put the skill back into human movement. I think that's what's confusing, is that we can always be working on skill. And we can, we teach kids to jump and land in gymnastics by having their feet together, knees touch. So when they jump and land, it's the same jumping and landing we teach people to jump out of an airplane. When they jump and land, you jump and land with your feet together. Why? You're protected. So we can layer in this skill and progress this skill infinitely for the rest of our lives, right? Your inability to get up off the ground without a point of contact is a really excellent predictor of your early mortality, right? And that's called getting up off the ground. So, the understanding here is that, we do a lot of Turkish get-ups for some reason, right? Getting up and down the ground is a burpee. What I'm saying is it's okay to put the skill back into this. It's okay that it takes a minute. It's okay to say this is a better expression of how humans should move. And yes, you can do that way, and it may or may not ever get hurt, but that's not the question. The question is are you leaving capacity on the table? Are you limiting your movement options? So if you jump and land, or you're always swinging kettlebell with your feet turned out, when you penetrate a room and you land and your feet are turned out like ducks, I guarantee you're going to undersweep or oversweep. Why? Because you can't rotate all the way around when your leg is in that position. So, and are you going to be able to jump and land and move and cut and move effectively? And you're not. So, what we really should be asking is, what is the best expression of the human being? Why is there a disconnect between that and how we train and what should be normal for a human being? And right now we just have apologetics, just through the roof, right? It's okay. Everyone's valuable. You're a special snowflake. No, you're not. There's not that much deviation in the human hip. The human hip should have this much rotation, this much flexion. This is what normal range of motion looks like in this basic range. And you already possess that language. It's called squatting. It's called push-ups. It's called hinging and picking something up. It's pull-ups. We have the diagnostic tool. That's the movement. So when we get closer to the gym and understand what it is we're doing at the gym, then we can begin better at understanding what's really happening with the body. Then we can have the next conversation. And that's what we're trying to do. Demystify this whole thing. You don't need a physical therapist. You don't need a doctor. You need you.
Yeah, right on. Or episode 1 of Mobility Wod. You're like, honestly, you're a freaking pioneer, man. That was just your iPhone, and you're just like selfieing the video.
Oh no, it wasn't.
No,
the iPhone did not have a video camera back then. That's how.
Oh no, shit. That was that was version 1, 2008.
I'm holding a Casio camera that did video, and I downloaded it and uploaded. It was a disaster.
Oh man, but honestly, like you saw something there, and that was freaking awesome. Like I just rewatched episode 1 again, and just that alone, like if people out there are like, oh man, where do I start? Episode 1's awesome because it's just about squatting, keep your feet straight.
Do not go to episode 1. It's me. We were very bad. It's me. I have hair. I'm skinny. It's me filming my crotch for 10 minutes. So, but the idea is, and what is important is the very first episode we ever did about trying to get people to understand that they are responsible, can control, was, hey, you don't need any equipment. Let's spend time in the position we're trying to improve, which is squatting. So let's spend time and let's just accumulate 10 minutes in the bottom position. And the simplicity of that idea, that we had so many people just say, I couldn't do that. And I was like, what do you mean? You can't take a poop in the woods? You can't have dinner? You can't read a map? You know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about? So, at some point we took our eye off that skill and it became dormant. We're going to have to reclaim those skills. But it comes back to just beginning the conversation. We like people to work on their shapes or positions or soft tissues for 10 minutes a day. If you don't have 10 minutes a day, you're lying to yourself. Mm-hmm. And you can sit in the squat and watch TV. It's so easy to be able to integrate this into your life so that this doesn't become one more thing you have to do. I've got to eat one more basket of kale. I got to do one more biohacking thing. I got to do, forget that. You can integrate this into the rest of your daily practice. So the whole time we've been talking, I'm sitting on the ground, sitting 90-90, sitting cross-legged. Why? Because I'm going to go exercise after this and I have to get myself ready to be able to do that. So I'm trying to integrate all this hip range of motion while we've been talking this whole time.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, finding 10 minutes is so easy. It's just that we make excuses. Like just case in point, like your couch stretch, right? That's huge. Just that alone, man. Like to be doing nothing is almost like a foreign concept now. And that took a long time for me to incorporate where, I'll grab the foam roller. Yeah, I'm watching Netflix with the wife, but man, I'm doing something, because I know if not, I'm going to end up like I was like 3-4 years ago. And I'm not in my optimal state, hands down.
Certainly if you want to train and run and lift the way we know it's possible. If you want to do less, you probably need a little bit less. Mm-hmm. If you want to train like a modern person, you're going to have some input on your body. And that's okay. Yeah. And 10 minutes a day is 70 minutes a week. That's 70 minutes. That's so much. That's freakish. So, the bottom line is, again, as we talked about in the beginning, we're going to have to reconceptualize how this whole thing works. Who's responsible for what? When do we do it? And our feeling is we can shift this responsibility back onto the person because they're clever enough to work it out.
Man, Kelly, I could talk to you for another like 3 hours, but I know for our listeners and for you and for myself as well, we've only got so much time. So I have a pressing question. I wanted to know exactly where Mobility Wod, where did it all start from? Like, obviously, you're a physical therapist, but there's a whole bunch of other physical therapists. What just made you realize like, hey man, I want to put like this on the internet so for free so that everybody can get their hands on it? Like for me, it was incredible. Like the amount of people that you've influenced, myself included, like we set out to serve the people that we were working with, right? That's, I think with podcasting and personal branding and Instagram, I think we've lost the narrative. Like one of the things that I wanted to do with this, I made a video and told one person. That was it. That was the whole beginning of the thing. And some of this was, I need people to not have to take a day off work and fly across the country or get a doctor's note to come see me to tell them that their quads are stiff or they can't extend their hip. Like that's not a good use of time. Like bring your complex problems to me, bring your complex movement understanding to me. Don't come in here with really low level problems. And so, excuse me, there was a time where I wrote a poem a day for a year, right? As a drill. I don't remember when I did it. Maybe I was like 24, 25. And then I was like, well, I'll just make a video a day for a year and see if I can level up, right? And then also I'll have a micro tool where I can be like, go check out episode 46. That's your problem, right? For my own athletes and for my own patients. And then this thing snowballed because, one of the things that, the best coaches and athletes, the best coaches I've ever worked with have always been very transparent in their model. They said, this is how I'm doing it. Here are my results. Here's what it looks like during practice. And if you want to see it, come hang out with me and I'll show you all my secrets. And physical therapy wasn't doing that at all. And, you go injured and you go into a room and someone does something to you and it has nothing to do with your life. It's like this correlate language.
it's the language of no, you can't go deadlift, you can't put more than 100 pounds over your head, just like these nonsense words. And, what we try to do is just start to be transparent. This is how we're thinking. Here's what our environment actually looks like. And that really spoke to people because it was real. And more importantly, we disrupted who was the narrative of who was responsible for what. We used to tell people, like, you're in pain, go see a medical professional. And I'm like, how's that working for everyone? And I'm like, so let's move pain back into the Venn diagram of coach-athlete responsibility and away from the Venn diagram of real injury and real pathology, which is what we should be using our medical system for. So, we set out to do that, and then we never set out to do this, and I think the best businesses are one where you serve people and you solve a problem for people. And that's what we're continuing to try to do, is realize that we're not talking to enough people. We're not serving enough people, and we're getting better at it. But we're going to, the glacial pace is the breakneck pace. This is how long it takes.
Right on. So Kelly, I want to ask you just a few last pressing questions. One of them is, I know you're a pretty cerebral guy. So you mentioned Yuval Harari. Do you have anybody else that you'd recommend that's like a must for any listener to either read or listen to these days?
I tell you what, really important book besides Yuval Harari and his book Homo Deus is important. I also currently, one of my favorite more recent books is written by a friend named David Epstein. He wrote The Sports Gene, which should be everyone's on reading list. His new book is called Range, and it's really about how generalists rule the world and being a savage generalist, not a specialist. And that means that you can jump into a Pilates class, you can go talk to therapists, you can really synthesize and integrate and see that the more diverse your skill set is and your experience, you'll have a better outcome and be able to solve novel problems. And that's really, I think that's crucial. Range is one of my favorite books this last year. We'll stop there. That's already just a treasure trove of things people need to read.
It's funny. The Sports Gene I've read a few times because it blew my mind. And Range was actually just on my this month's reading list. I just picked it up because it's all over the place, and I'm not surprised that you mentioned it too. So awesome. We'll get those in the show notes for sure. And I'm definitely going to get into it later this month. Okay. So then lastly, here's a question that I ask all my guests. What makes you hard to kill, man?
I have the greatest sidekick partner of all time. I am ultimately massively supported by my wife, who, when you have a tribe and you feel safe, that is the greatest power you ever. When you know someone has your back of all time, your mates, your girls, your boys, your partner, you are undeniably a more savage human being and never have to worry about or think about someone's motives. Safety is one of the most important things you can do in any organization to make people feel safe. And that's it. And then secondarily, I protect my sleep, man. My sleep is my top priority. And, I'm not super precious about it, but I go to bed early and I really try to control my sleep. And sometimes we don't watch movies and we don't hang out. We go to bed. I'm in bed. I'm in bed in the 9s because that's what it takes. So get my kids down. Sometimes I'm in bed before my teenager, but we try to be lights off before 10 o'clock. That's our goal.
Right on. Yeah. I have to, wholeheartedly agree with that, man. Like now with a 2-month-old at home, sleep is one of those things. It's just like when you can get it, when in doubt, rack out. And thank God for my wife, man. Like you said, like having that pillar at home, man, like she's a rock star at home. We got a 3-year-old too. So I totally understand about the sleep thing, man. I totally feel you. So Kelly, look, this has been an incredible episode, man. Thanks so much for sitting down. Again, you're an inspiration for me, and I'm sure anybody that's going to listen is going to feel the same way too. And
I'm in the gym here in San Francisco all the time. Come by and hang out with us. We run a coaches lab on Wednesdays at noon that I teach. I still teach. I'm on the schedule, on the floor. Our gym is what we call a teaching hospital. It's a test kitchen. We're always here. Come hang out, and we'll show you what we know.
Right on. So, Kelly, I'll tell the wife I'll be down next week.
Perfect.
On business trip. She hasn't listened all the way through to the end of any episode, so I can get by on that one. So, again, Kelly, thanks so much, man. It's awesome having you on. Good luck with the TRS, and best of luck up until the end of the year, man.
Appreciate you.
Cheers, brother.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find out more about training, nutrition, and mindset at davemorrow.net. Be sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram at Dave Morrow PT. And don't forget, strong people are hard to kill.